Welcome to the Pedal Collaborative podcast. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome back, everyone. We are here with another episode of the Pedal Collaborative podcast, and Alan is excited because we finally made it to the delay episode.
I am so excited, Paul. Actually, I've just been kind of going through the motions on these last episodes just to get us here.
I am aware of that. It became painfully obvious, as you were glazing over while we were talking.
No, it's almost like everything I said in the previous episodes is really just fodder, and I mean none of it because I'm again just trying to get to this moment.
Yeah, I understand, and also as we both have talked about, I think in our intro episode where we did our little who we are, we both really like delay. So I joke that you want to get here. But it does seem like you probably like delay more than me on average.
You think so?
Which is funny. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You've been really excited about this. Like every time we go to record, you're like, "Is it time for the fun one yet? Do we still have to talk about? Do we still have to talk about drive pedals?"
I know. But I think it is because while drive and that part of the signal path is so important foundationally to creating your tone, and I know that over the years you and I have spent so much time figuring out how to create that tone that is that signature for us. It is also kind of boring to me. And I think I fell in love with delay. And on the very first episode, we talked about like how when the Line 6 DL4 came out, how that was just, that just did something for me that really just kind of made me fall in love with the effect. So, I mean, while everything else is important, and it obviously was foundational for us to talk through the previous things in the signal path, this is what gets me jazzed.
Yeah, it does get me jazzed too. I was actually thinking beforehand, because I do think delay sort of just in like modern pedals, it has a bit of a stereotype into house of worship music, which we both have background in. But actually for me, I was trying to think like what made me like really understand how delay worked musically, because that's something I feel like we've talked about a lot of the technical in the earlier episodes, just because we were talking like what modulation does to your signal and what the differences are between drive, distortion, and fuzz. But I was actually thinking through it, and it was the explosions in the sky was the first thing when I heard a delay pedal used musically.
Yeah.
Where the way that they used it, not just as a technical, this matches my beats per minute type of delay, but almost as its own instrumentation in your signal path. And I was like super inspired by, I think it was their 2005 or 2006 album, The Earth Is Not a Cold Dead Place, which some of those songs were featured on the Friday Night Lights soundtrack.
Yeah.
And I remember first hearing like just these beautifully chimey guitars with these awesome delay trails or reverbs, which we'll get to on the next episode.
Well, we can talk about it now because reverb really is just delay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have the thing you always do, the technical of what they are. So, but I just wanted to talk about that real quick. Like, I was actually thinking about that knowing we were doing this episode.
Okay.
When did I first get like super into delay? And I think it was Explosions in the Sky.
Yeah.
So anyhow, let's talk about what is delay.
Well, hold on. I want to spend a second on Explosions in the Sky and that, because I was going to ask you, have you seen them live?
A long time ago, I'm going to say like 2009,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But not in like recent years.
Okay. I just had the the fortunate privilege of seeing them in LA. I guess this was NAMM 2024. They were going through and playing, and they were doing like The Earth Is Not a Cold Dead Place like in its entirety. That was the show.
Yeah. Why was I not there?
I don't know.
I would have liked that a lot.
Come out to NAMM next time. Well, I guess they won't be there next time, but it was, I mean, obviously, that album makes me think of you and an important day in your life, because that was part of, I forget what song it was, but one of those songs was part of your wedding ceremony.
It was the Your Hand in Mine.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful song. And yes, it was, which is timely since we are just, when this comes out, it'll be a little bit after, but just after my 10th wedding anniversary.
Hey, congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I know. And So yeah, listening to that and watching it them perform it, it was phenomenal. And I'm not usually one that enjoys necessarily just a instrumental concert. I don't know why. I mean, because I as a vocalist, because I've spent so many years singing as well as playing. But so usually I, not totally into the instrumental stuff, just in terms of watching. But this was transformative. And it was incredible. Like nothing was said besides hi and bye. And just having that band with all of their effects just perfectly, but it's like not, they weren't playing like they were playing with tracks, because they weren't. It was just like they were just playing a record that they've been playing for 20 years, but it was so good, and they knew how to use their effects. And like you said, so much of it does hearken to the delay side of things.
That's beautiful. Yeah, no, that experience too of just watching an instrumental band. I saw them at, I want to say it's called the Tower Theater in Philly. It
used to be the Tower Theater in Philadelphia, but they've changed it.
Okay, that is where I saw them.
Okay.
And it was a very cool venue because they used to, is that the one that has like stars on the ceiling? Am I thinking of the right venue?
Are you thinking of the Trocadero?
I might be. I saw them at one of those venues, and it was really cool because same thing. Hello, goodbye. Incredibly moving instrumental pieces in the interim of that.
Yeah.
And just like you're sitting there feeling things and experiencing things. And it was really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. I tried to force you to talk about what delay is when you wanted to respond to me talking about explosions.
I'm sorry. Oh,
so sorry for that.
Oh my gosh. This is just, I don't even know how I can continue on with even being your friend.
Yeah, because I cut you off and tried to make you not talk about art and just talk about the technical side of music, which is terrible. But on that note, yes. Talk to me about what delay is. And as you said, it's just reverb, which is something that I remember discovering and being
delay.
Chagrined
reverb
by.
is just delay.
Yeah, said it backwards.
It's not the other way. It's like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square always. Anyway, so the techniques behind it.
It's actually a really good analogy. Good job.
Thank you. I look for moments to use that analogy in my life. Okay, so delay. Here's the simple and the basics of it. It is a time-based effect that copies the incoming signal and plays it back. That's as simple as it gets.
Simple enough.
Yep. So you can, there are so many other parameters that a delay pedal or plugin can use to make it unique. So you can adjust the period of time between the incoming signal and the first, it's called a tap. The first tap, you can adjust then how many taps play. So that's called usually feedback or repeats. You can then also adjust those. I don't want to get too far forward because we're just talking this basics right now, but essentially you can add so many other parameters like LFO and, drive and chorus and all these other things that you could add to the repeats to make it unique, which is why there are so many unique delay pedals on the market.
Yep. And before we go too deep into that, yes, I think what's cool about that is, as you talked about, just like repeating the incoming signal and how you can morph it into different things as it feedbacks. Morph it. A pedal that has become somewhat the namesake of your pedal board in recent years and the channel, the Maris LVX delay.
Yes.
It does like everything that you could ever think of in the world in a delay pedal. But it is what I like about it is it's also laid out in a way that makes sense. But when you're talking about all the parameters you can apply, I was like, don't go into the LVX yet, Alan. We have too many videos about it. We'll talk about it later. I didn't bring
it up on this moment. You did.
I know. I'm publicly letting the audience know that we're not going to talk about it yet because you like it so much.
Well, we can wait to dive into it a lot further. And like you said, yes, anybody interested in that pedal specifically, there are a crap ton of pedals on the channel about it and what it does. But we can still mention it in the discussions of delay, just like we can mention the timeline.
Yes, which I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But do you want to finish the how it's reverb and related before we keep moving?
No, that's the next episode.
Next episode. All right, we'll talk about reverb next. No, well, and I think since we've kind of each of these episodes when we stop in on a thing, this might end up being a two-parter. I don't know. We'll see what happens because we both do like this effect. I think what's neat about it is understanding how delay and reverb interplay with each other at the back end of your signal chain. That's something I think both of us like to mix and match and see how trails are affected. That's something I've always loved.
Right.
But I have actually, for many, many years, really enjoyed delay pedals where you can sort of get reverb out of it on certain settings.
Okay.
That's something I know, the Maris Polymoon, which I have, which is the little baby brother of the LVX.
The baby LVX.
Yeah, the baby LVX. The Polymoon is cool because some of the settings on that are just straight up like rack mount reverbs.
Right.
If you like just move the delay in certain settings.
Right.
And then the delays are really unique because of the way that has like a repeats button. It does it by like how many repeats you can dial in a number. And just that type of effect, like the Earthquaker Afterneath also, which I recently got, which I got because the guys in Explosions in the Sky use that pedal.
Oh, nice.
Actually.
Nice.
Which I talked about on an early episode, how I buy things that I'm inspired by people.
Yes, you did.
But that I've always kind of wanted that pedal and I hadn't tried it. And I have a cool limited colorway pink and blue one that you actually acquired for me. Thank you.
I did.
And what's cool about that is it's I think most people would probably classify that primarily as a reverb, but because it's so out there and has like the lag knob and stuff, there's a lot of really cool delay sounds that you can get out of that pedal.
Yeah.
If you sort of understand what each algorithm is doing, then how the knobs interplay with that. I've always liked those pedals that sort of straddle the line between the two time-based effects. Because it allows you to sort of create, and I'd say this on every episode, I think, but that wall of sound type thing gets a lot easier when you have a delay that can be a reverb and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay, so then maybe we do need to talk about what reverb is in comparison.
I think we do. Okay. That's why all right.
Well, I didn't know we were going down this rabbit hole. That's fine. I love it. Okay, so if a delay is just like repeating your incoming signal at specific time intervals, and length of repeats, meaning like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, infinite times, whatever. Reverb is more atmospheric. So you kind of have to imagine space. Whereas so look, delay is time-based. Take that time-based effect of delay and then apply it to space. So you often see reverb pedals, classic reverb pedals, having things like hall or spring or plate or room. Those are all specific spaces that when you listen to the incoming signal, the dry signal, even if it is delayed or modulated, going into the reverb effect, what comes out is that being applied to that space as if you were playing in that space. So think about a long hallway in university or a hospital or whatever the case is. You're walking down, maybe you're wearing loud enough shoes that you're actually hearing the delay or echo, but it's being then bounced back at almost like non-linear times as it's hitting the different surfaces and reflecting in different ways. So it essentially takes those repeats that you're getting on a delay and it washes them out in a thing called trails. And it's depending on what space you're imagining, it can be quick. A small room, a small bathroom, if you're all tiled up or whatever, and in there, because it's a small space, the amount of trails is going to be smaller. So you clap your hands, snap your fingers, and it's pretty quick. And how quickly that echo or reverb dissipates versus going into like an airplane hangar or an arena, and doing the same thing, clapping and hearing how long that series of echoes and delays as it gets smeared out into the trails dissipates. Does that make sense?
Beautiful description. I love the way you map that out. And also now I'm like picturing all of that in my head. So I hope the audience feels the same way.
Yeah. And I was using my hands a whole lot doing that analogy. So
I know how you talk. So I was picturing that too. So, But yeah, no, I think that was a helpful, just to explain how there are pedals that can straddle the line, as I mentioned. So let's just get into some of the ones that we like and have used, because if we go into the ones we've owned on this, I know we both have talked about DL4 and the DD5 as like our first for delay pedals.
Yeah.
I've had so many delay pedals, and it's gross, the amount of them.
Okay, so hey, what if we approach this a little bit differently?
Yeah, go ahead.
What if we kind of talk through not necessarily the delay pedals that we've tried, but maybe the delay pedals that have kind of been our staple in a moment of time.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
Since our history, right?
Yes, I like that. So the ones that have sort of stood the test of time at each barrier, because if we go to each one, we'll have like 7 episodes, and I don't think people want to listen to us just wax poetic about one too.
Right, but I do think doing it this way, as we've kind of like listened back to some of the podcast episodes, and if you've been with us, you know that we're trying to approach this in a simple way, because that's how when both Paul and I started, like we weren't experts in effects. We tried a lot of things ourselves, and we learned what we liked and didn't like. So in some ways, the whole concept of this channel, both on the social media side and the podcast side, is really just using the information that we know that hopefully helps in some form or fashion. Are we experts? No. But do we have opinions? Yes. So.
Yeah, I like that breakdown. So yeah, different intervals. I have always had, this is just to this day true.
Okay.
I always like to have 3 types of delay on hand.
Like at all
I like
times?
to have at all times.
Okay.
I like to have an analog delay.
Got it.
I like to have a Boss DD series, just one of them, because I love that pedal, and I've loved every iteration they've made for different reasons. And then I like to have a big multi-effects with tons of presets.
Yeah. That's
my mixture of knowing that I can cover all my bases with a delay pedal. That's all I need.
Got it.
Those 3 things. One that's a simple Boss DD, one analog, and then one that is kind of my, like, I can make all sorts of massive things in it.
Got it.
How about you? I'll go into specifics, but I want to hear your staples.
I don't know if I've ever consistently had 3 delays on my board. I think at most it's always been 2. So essentially what you said was take the DD out of it. Unless it was like the DD20, and in the season of time, it was my multi-effects. But yeah, I would say probably an analog or analog voiced delay and a multi-effects or multi-delay. Yeah.
Now, like, let's talk about analog a bit. Like, why the analog delay?
I think part of it kind of goes back to the original, like when I kind of started down this road and trying all these different things, the first delay that I had that didn't really have a tap tempo, didn't have all these things. This is, you just stick with me for a second. It wasn't an analog one, but like, we referenced the Sunny Day delay in a previous episode. I had the original big box Sunny Day delay, which has that, the PT2399 chip. Oh man, we'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's the same one that's in my black hole symmetry we talked about, and I still don't know what the name of the chip is. Every time I look it up, it just goes, it's not information my brain retains.
I know, for some reason I've looked it up 1,000 times. It is a digital chip, like an IC chip that is voiced analog, so there's a warmth to it. But the warmthness isn't necessarily what draws me to an analog or analog style delay. It is honestly the limitations of it. It makes me kind of work harder to fit it in with what I'm doing. The Sunny Day delay is a great example because the big box has no tap. Like you dial in the time, and that's where you're at. So like if you're playing in a group that not that it requires, but that it kind of behooves you to use MIDI clock or tap tempo, something to kind of keep your taps in specific time intervals, using an analog or analog based delay that doesn't have that ability really, to me, makes me become a little bit more intentional with how I'm creating the sound.
That makes sense, because you're not able to automatically snap to grid.
Correct.
You have to sort of figure out what you're doing, how each knob interplays to get the effect that you're trying to have fit into the song you're making or the jam you're working through.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think actually to that point, because that's pretty similar to why I like to have one.
Okay.
Like I like the limitation. I also like, especially because big box delays, like we both have like presets on, I have a timeline, you have an LVX. They're not as easy to sit down and just like, if you want to get a sound, you know, you have to go through like to find a bank you don't want to overwrite or something.
Yes.
I always like to have something that's just there that's like, I want to try and create this thing and I can just like move some knobs and find it.
Yep.
And also like be okay with like messing it up. Like, hey, you know what? I'm jamming with some friends. I want to make a crazy oscillated noise and like turn up my time really fast and my mix really fast and then turn them down and get that like woo noise delay can do.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that's why I've always liked to have something like that. That's just the knobs are there. If I mess with it, it's not overwriting something I made for another reason.
Right.
That's the thing for me. That's like, I just love having that available to me.
No, 100%. I mean, and generally speaking, analog delays have a warmth to them that the digital based delays don't. And of course you can use, you know, compression and EQ and things like that as well as, you know, before a delay or within a delay to kind of mimic that. And even like now it's, you know, here in 2024, the processing power of some of these big box delays can really do a good job sounding warm. But there's almost this, the organic nature of a true analog delay, like a Memory Man or something like that, it really is hard to beat or hard to emulate that specific part of it digitally.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've done several shootouts. The one that I think most recently was hard for me to part with, but I decided I didn't need it, was the Chase Bliss Tonal Recall.
Yeah.
And it had that thing where it feels like the waves of washing over you in like warm butter, the way the delay sounds.
It's like it's warm butter, but not hot butter, because hot butter will burn you.
Yeah. I'm talking like, you know, you've had your waffles out there and you've poured your syrup on and then like you've let it like melt in a little bit. It's not like searing hot. That's what that analog delay sound feels like to me. Warm butter washing over
honestly,
you.
And bringing in the syrup analogy into that, A, I'm getting hungry, but B, like perfect way to describe tone out of an analog delay. Buttery and syrup.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Okay.
So that's for you. Why you have that, and then multi-tap or multi.
Well, the big box. We'll call them big box. So I say multi effects, but I mean that somewhat of a misnomer, because like a multi effects to me would be like an HX effects or something where it has delay and reverb and trim and chorus and all of those available. So
yeah, that's true. The big box delays. The big box delays are presets.
Big box yes, they have presets that you can toggle to and get to on the fly. So why those, Paul?
Yeah.
Why have you always had a big box delay?
So I got a timeline, I think the year after they came out.
Okay.
I made a very foolish decision at the time that is a regret of mine, which I had an original NOS chip, EHX Memory Man 1100.
Okay.
And I traded it straight up for a guy who had a timeline. And at the time, the timeline was like hot off the presses and hard to get. They were like not everywhere like they are now. And that was a regretful trade value-wise, because I think like 3 months later, EHX announced they were discontinuing those NOS 1100 ones, and it went from like being around the same value as the timeline to being like $800 used. And I was like, oh no. However, no regrets, because I've had a timeline since. I did actually flip that one and end up buying another timeline, but that's for another day. But the timeline for me, it gave me in one box, it allowed me to stop running like 3 or 4 delays on my pedal board to get different sounds. Like if I wanted something that was a reverse delay, that's one of the reasons I always had a Boss DD type delay, is it had reverse on it. And reverse is a cool way to do delay. And not every analog certainly don't have it.
Right.
And not all digital is created equal where that's concerned. And the
That's
timeline gave me emulated analogs, emulated bucket brigades, emulated tape delays, some of the weirder ones where you get like the shimmer on the trails, you get octaves on the trails, there's the trem delays. And at the time, I mean, there was like the Eventide time factor and I guess the Boss DD20, kind of when the timeline came out. There really wasn't anything that gave you 200 banks of presets and the ability to craft and shape all of those different types of delay models.
Right.
And so for me, it was a way to remove some of the gear decision fatigue of like, I want to have a versatile board. I just want to have something that can kind of capture everything. And also because I have played in bands and have used it for different reasons, having the ability to save, wow, I just made a perfect sound for insert song here.
Yeah.
Save, done, printed. I can call that back up forever and ever and ever. So the timeline for me became that very quickly. And I have had wandering eyes in recent months, especially as you show me things the LVX can do. But the timeline's still my main squeeze because of the fact that though it's over a decade old, it still sounds great too.
Yeah.
Like each model sounds great in that box. And that's something I think that speaks to how far ahead of the curve Strymon was back in 2000. I think 10 or 11 they came out with that. I'm not sure which one it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a minute ago.
Yeah, and it stood the test of time, and so it's just and it also interacts with like all of the different MIDI controllers out there, so I can like call things up without having to like actually stomp or move menus, etc.
Right.
So for me, it's the all-in-one box where I can get all the different sounds and pretty much dial in a parameter to get that sound that maybe an individual box might have to have been on my board in the past. And then being able to control things and save things.
Yeah.
That's why it's there. So I'm assuming, but I want to hear your take. That's what the LVX is for you, yeah?
It is. And just real quick, I Googled it. The Strymon timeline was released in January of 2011.
2011.
So yeah,
Dang.
It's 13 years old at this point. And while we do anticipate, here we are in August recording this episode, August of 2024, we do anticipate the next generation of the timeline being released within weeks to months. It isn't yet. So even that 13 and a half years, is pretty impressive when it comes, especially when it comes to digital effects.
Yeah, it's quite the lifespan in technology, especially because there obviously have been leaps and bounds. And like, I remember when I saw your LVX for the first time, the fact that it just had USB-C instead of USB as the interface,
right,
was like indicative to me of like, wow, they really need to update the timeline.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's been a while. But it is from just an audio standpoint, it is still kind of like on par with anything else out there.
It is,
which I think is impressive.
It absolutely is. And if you look at people's pedal boards, whether it's amateurs to professionals, the timeline is a staple in most of them. Yeah.
And I even foresee, even after a new one, like it'll probably still be there just because
it will.
That's one of those things where I have like sentimental value attached to my timeline now. So I will want whatever they release next, but I'm going to have a hard time like moving mine or like not. I might just keep mine. Who knows? I'll just keep mine.
Keep it.
Have two timelines.
Well, so the tricky thing is, and again, obviously we're recording this in a specific moment of time, and as time continues, things could change. But in this moment, if we look at the Big Sky MX, which is their reverb effect, the newest reverb that came out this year, or a couple months ago in 2024, it is the next generation of their big boxes. So like the original Big Sky, October of 2011, I think is when it was released. If you look at the differences, we'll go down that path later, but my specific reason for bringing it up is you currently can't take your presets that you made on the original Big Sky and put them on the Big Sky MX, again, as of this moment. So for someone like you who has tons and tons and tons of presets that you've built over the years and years and years of using the timeline, if you can't get that onto the next generation, then all that time's wasted.
Yeah, that would be really frustrating.
Yeah.
So I guess I have to keep mine. There we go.
There it is. Keep it. But no, so to answer your question, why do I like the big box effects? It's everything that you said. But I'll also add that it ends up just being cheaper than having a bunch of different delays, especially if I don't need a bunch of different delays at the same time, right? So like if
that's a good way to think about it.
Like, okay, so the Maris LVX, as of this moment, retails for a USD of $600, $599. But let's say I wanted that Chase Bliss. Well, they don't have the Tonal Recall out anymore, so it's the Therme. That's a $500 pedal. Also, as it lists, I think is $499. So
I think that's what it is on their website.
Yeah. So if I wanted that, I would need to have that. Plus, then I want to have the Strymon L Cap, which is a tape based. That's $379. And then I want to have like a little thing. Like I want to have just I want to do what Paul says and get a Boss DD. And I don't
gotta have reverse.
And I don't know which Boss DD is currently out right now. That's not a big one. But let's just say I find one, a DD5 on the internet, and it's $100. I'm now $400 more than just having the LVX specifically. Can I do everything at one time with an LVX that I can with all three of those at the same time? No, because that's 3 different delays that you can run at the same time. Point of it being, the way that I play, I don't need more than 2 delays. And need is a very, first world problem thing, right? I don't need more than 2 delays at a time. So to have a big box, whether it is the LVX or the Timeline or the Source Audio Nemesis or, even like the Eventide H9 or H90, any of those types of things, like they can cover so much ground at a lower price point than having individual delays to cover the same ground. Not to mention pedal board space.
Yeah, no, I actually hadn't necessarily thought of that angle before you said it. And frankly, like as I've mentioned, I've had analog delays and different Boss iterations alongside the time I've owned the Timeline. But it's probably saved me like some gas, energy, and money to just, when a new pedal comes out, if the Timeline can do it, I don't necessarily need to get that pedal.
Right.
I just need to fiddle around and see, what's the unique angle they're taking?
Right.
Okay, cool. I can emulate that.
Yep.
Or the thing of it that I would do, I can emulate. Because
right.
Also that's a thing with a lot of pedals.
Which then I think makes it like if you use a big box as a staple piece, big box delay, then the secondary delays that you have can be very specific in what they do. And you're not relying on that one sound, right? So does that make sense? Like,
yeah. And I mean, that's how when I don't currently have all of my stuff on the board at the same time because I have other effects. But that's how a lot of times, like the analog, as I mentioned, it'll be set to something that I can mess around with. And then the Boss, if I have it on there, it's usually set to like, I'm using like a specific glitch delay for a certain noise I need to accomplish for this track.
Right.
So I'm going to have it set here. It's going to be set to the same tap as my everything else, using my clock. And then I hit it. It's doing that exact thing. And then it is set to that only.
Yeah.
Which there is value in having secondary delays that can do that and your big box that can do everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really do love delay. It's like talking about this just makes me want to play. Like as we're talking about it, I'm like, man, I want to sit down and fiddle with some knobs now.
Well, after we're done recording, you can by all means do that, and then it can show up as the outro music to this episode or any of the episodes. Because as those of you who may or may not know, Paul has scored pretty much everything we've done on the podcast here, minus maybe like one outro.
Yes, yeah, I'd like to make little noises, and I'm usually making them for like projects or writing, but this has been a nice outlet for the fact that I'm constantly making weird little noises or melodic little things that I'm not sure what to do with. Now you guys get to hear them when you're listening to the outro of each episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so
I was
gonna say, so we started with the DL4s. Can
Yes.
you quickly run down the big boxes that you've had that have been your namesakes till now?
Okay, so
And we don't have to go into why. Just what are they?
yeah, so my first big box was a DD20.
Okay.
I had a DD20. I then had the Memory Man. That was the next one I jumped to, was the Memory Man, which I had for a couple years. I think I had that when we first met.
I think so.
Probably, because I had gotten it before then. And then I got a Timeline. I did have, for a very brief period of time, alongside, because I just was like wanting to try, I had a Time Factor I think this is when you were in Mexico, and
Okay.
I probably had it and got rid of it within a week because it was like compared to the timeline weak sauce. And then I have had a DL4, which are we considering a DL4 big box? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a DL4 modded one that like I think was like lent to me from my friend, and then I had it for a while, and then eventually it just wasn't at my house anymore. So I'm not sure what happened to that one. And the other one that I had was, what is the one I'm thinking of? The you mentioned it earlier. I had it from I demoed it from Tone Tailors, the Source Audio one.
Okay,
what's that one called?
The Nemesis?
Yes, which you also had for a hot minute too, I think.
I did have for a hot minute. But
Yeah.
not as a
I didn't love that one, but it is cool, and I get why people like it.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, so some of those were ones I like borrowed or demoed or used for a project, but at the end of the day, it was like the ones that stand out to me are the Boss DD series, the Memory Man, and the Timeline are the ones I think if someone thought of me, they'd be like, oh, that's a Paul pedal.
Yeah,
because I used those ones like pretty distinctly. But I've had all those other ones in between, whether borrowed or leased or used for a specific thing, and I've liked all of them for different reasons and disliked some of them for other reasons. So how about you? Run through because you've had. Even in the last year, I feel like
I've had so many, but for a different reason. All right, so like again, my staple namestay big box delays over the course of the last 20 years. It's a short list, honestly. DL4, then to I think I went to the Timeline, and then jumped down to the Boss DD20, and then went to the Strymon L Cap. Back to the time.
Oh, are we counting the L Cap as a big box?
Well, it was my only delay at the moment because I found myself really with the Timeline only using the tape delay.
Yeah, I forgot one then because I had an L Cap and I also had a JHS Panther Cub.
You did because we just posted a picture of your board with the Panther Cub on it on the Instagram.
Yeah, that was honestly a pretty cool analog delay, but it was still at the end of the day an analog delay and didn't give me the needs I had. So
yeah, no, currently I wouldn't count the L Cap as being a big box, but it did that function for me when I used it, when I had it as the only thing. And then now the LVX, and the LVX has kind of it's been king for me since it was released in end of 2022. Yeah.
It feels like it might have been longer than that, but no. And I also appreciate the LVX becoming your signature thing because it is a very inspiring pedal to listen to. And you've kind of, I think, pushed the limits of what it can do in it and in kind of its current format of just you've emulated at this point so many other pedals or like maybe a specific effect from another pedal as a preset. And I mean, there are times like I'll give you feedback. I'll say, that one's not quite the thing. That doesn't to my ear sound like, but it's a close enough approximation that it's incredible what you're able to pull out of that pedal.
Yeah.
And it does make, I have, as I said, wandering eyes about the LVX because it does feel like in some ways like the new generation's Timeline. I'm going to wait to reserve that judgment until the new Timeline comes out, and then we'll probably do a shootout and talk about it. But
yeah, but when the new Timeline comes out, that somewhere in that time frame, Maris is going to release the limited edition, the matte black LVX, which is just gonna call your name.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about my black pedal issue on the podcast. But
we've alluded to it, but we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, I can if I wanted to. I've sort of been intentional to keep like a couple pops of other color when I build my boards for projects or recording sessions. I can create an entirely black pedal board of, let's see, compression, distortion, drive, fuzz, chorus, phase, reverb, delay, and even amp sim. All the way. I have a whole entirely black pedal board.
It's because you're metal, dude.
It's incredibly metal. It's actually what I would describe myself as too. So, but yeah, you're right. I forgot they were doing that. Actually, you brought me back a gas problem because that's going to come out. I think it's in like a few weeks. The black one.
They had said end of summer.
Which isn't a few weeks.
But I know that they're busy working on some other things. So it might, like a new colorway. It's not necessarily the biggest thing to work on, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool though. I'm excited about it. Because we should wrap up delay, because we're going to talk about delay and reverb again next week.
Sure.
I'm just going to say. So I mentioned this to you right before we started recording, because we did talk about Explosions in the Sky as like an inspiring band that uses this effect. And I wanted to ask you if there are any artists currently that when you listen to them play guitar, the way they use this effect sort of like stands out to you as like, oh man, they're really like exemplifying this. I have an answer. If you don't have one yet, I can talk, but do you have an answer that you thought of?
You just threw the word current in there, which changes my answer. So
okay, not current, just an artist that exemplifies it for you though. Cut out that word.
Radiohead.
Okay, that's a pretty good answer for delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially that was the reason I got into the timeline.
Okay.
Because Johnny Greenwood actually, I think, has 2 timelines on his board, which is like, I have no room to speak about excessive, but it does feel excessive to have 2 timelines.
Well, I mean, you're not not a touring musician.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If I was still
you could
playing
be, though,
live
Paul.
shows all the time, I could probably make that argument.
I'm not saying you're not as
I
good.
could make that argument.
You are definitely that good. You're just not currently a touring musician.
Yes. Radiohead's a good answer.
Yeah. What about you?
Is there a particular song you think of real quick with delay? Because there's a couple Radiohead ones that pop out to me of delay.
I'm really bad with song names. So, yes.
The song 15 Step from In Rainbows.
Gosh, I love that. So, yeah. Anything from In Rainbows, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, and I mentioned this beforehand, it's Julian Baker.
Killer guitarist.
Yes, she's like kind of an underrated guitarist too, because I feel like she does get some flowers from the indie rock community and those who sort of maybe found out about her because of Boy Genius last year at like a larger level.
Right.
But one, historically, like guitar is a very heavily male dominated space, so I feel like she should get a lot more recognition.
True.
But her use of delay and reverb pedals, both of them, I read an interview with her a couple years back where she talked about how sometimes she allows her writing to be sort of dictated by like the gear she's obsessed with at the moment, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel like that is sort of maximizing your experience of like getting a new pedal and figuring out everything it can do.
Right.
And I just think that she uses, everything really well, but a lot of her delays, especially her second album, which I can't think of it, Turn Out the Lights. There's just a lot of really cool, like chimey little delay lines and lead lines and just shaping that she does with delay.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
Yeah. And live, she is phenomenal. I saw, when Boy Genius was on their tour last year, I got to see them and just like what she can do with her tone. Like, I don't know. It's not that, I don't know, like not that she's the only one that can do it, but it just,
she makes a Fender Telecaster sound great.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. But I am kind of mad at her though, if we're going to be honest. And I'll tell you why.
Why is that?
I'll tell you why. She did a really, really cool thing in the dark days of COVID where at the end of the year, she gave away a whole bunch of gear.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Which,
one of them was a microcosm.
Yes.
I actually entered that one because I was like, I'll try a microcosm. I'll try and win.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm mad at her because I didn't win anything.
Yeah, that's a totally valid reason to be upset with someone, is that you didn't win something that probably thousands of people entered.
I think so.
So, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
But, all right, well, let's wrap up delay. And this is by no means the last time we'll talk about delay pedals, especially as we just alluded to some new big box timeline coming out in the near-ish future that we'll definitely talk about and do videos with.
I feel like when we go over a topic, so we've done compression, we've done two things of drive, modulation, this is delay, and then we're going to go into reverb. But like, it's like when we talk about it in an episode in this signal chain series, it unlocks us to be able to use it in the vocabulary moving forward. So like we've just unlocked the delay level.
Yeah, because you haven't mentioned it at all before now.
Not at all.
It's so wild that we just now can talk about
I know.
it. No, I like that idea. We now have that. We can add it to our discussion. We're building our board,
Yeah.
So next week we will be diving more into reverb. I know we sort of touched that a bit since reverb is delay, but all reverb is not delay, as Alan said, the square rectangle analogy. And I will say reverb is one for me where I actually think I get lost in this effect more than I have various ones sitting in front of me on my desk right now, because reverb to me is just like being able to freeze things in space is really fun.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk reverb. I know we both like those as well. So it'll be very fun to talk with you all again and keep collaborating. Thank you.
Peace.